Hello out there in podcast land. Welcome to the very first episode of Cinematic Treasures. I am your host, Chris, and I will be taking you on a guided tour of my personal library of films and try to educate you on physical media and how important it is to cinematic history. You are the curator of the films that you own. Nobody can touch them. You own them for life. They're not edited. They're not deleted. They're not canceled. This actually, it was a quote that came from Christopher Nolan recently. And I happen to agree with him. We are the curators of the films. We are the ones that hold them in our hands. You know, no matter what you enjoy, no matter how much you enjoy. I personally, over the last 25 plus years, I own over 600 films, easily cataloged down in my dungeon. And I'll tell you, this is going to be quite a journey. For a long time, people had asked me to do this. I have a wealth of knowledge to pass on, and we're going to have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Now who's that? Who's at my door? Hold on a second. I got to get this. All right. Hello, and oh, hey. It's actually my co-host, Red. She just came into the room, and how you doing?
Hey, how are you? How's it going?
Did you have to ring the doorbell? You could have knocked.
But I like the sound of the doorbell.
I was just telling the audience that how we're going to roll with this show, and you know what? Honestly, I don't want to delay it any longer. I just want to get going. There's a lot of movies that Red likes also from my collection, and other movies she likes, and other movies I don't like, and that's the whole point. The whole point is not everybody's going to like what we review, not everybody's going to remember what we review, but I hope there's people out there who will actually take the time to go see the film, stream it, buy it, however you're going to do it, and watch it and learn and love, because that's how you discover new stuff. It's the only way to do it. And some of these movies are obscure, some of them are not obscure, and some of them are mainstream films that some people, you know, the other day somebody was telling me that The Godfather, they've never seen The Godfather. Could you imagine?
I know a lot of people who haven't seen a lot of movies that I have seen many times, and I don't know how that happens.
The problem is I don't understand the whole mainstream thing. I mean, like, for instance, Oppenheimer, it was just big over the summer along with Barbie. You know, some people didn't go see it. Well, when somebody comes to you on the street, or a friend or family, and says, you know, hey, this is the biggest movie ever, you've got to come see it. Don't you go, okay, yeah, I'll go see it?
No, not all the time. Only if I think I'd like to. Only if I knew if I understood it. To see me, I have a hard time understanding stuff, and I often have to have help.
I can understand, though, if the film is a little like, I don't like that, but just think if people didn't line up to see Jaws, I mean, or Star Wars, or The Godfather, or any film that has multiple Academy Awards, and you know, people say, oh, I didn't get to see that one, but I'm trying. Well, it's 40 years later. There are people out there who've never seen The Exorcist. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
People out there who hasn't seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer either.
You know, that made me laugh when somebody we recently know said they never saw Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
And you know, she's, what, 19?
Well, see, that's the other thing, too. I remember when our children were in school, they would come home and say, you know, Dad, these kids in school, they've never even heard of these movies.
Because their parents don't, well, for one, they're probably not allowed to see it with their parents. Two, people don't even own a VCR anymore.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like,
they don't know how to get it.
As far as I was talking about physical media formats, when you talk about formats, the very first format that I even know that was out there was Super 8. And they were like little mini reel-to-reels. And we used to have them in our classrooms when we were younger. The projector, you know, the Super 8. There it is behind me. That's the Super 8 camera noise.
I remember somebody had to turn off the lights, and somebody had to click the button on.
So when you hear this noise, you know exactly what you're hearing.
I knew what I was going to say. I watched a film or something.
If the camera worked. Sometimes the school equipment didn't work.
Yeah, what's up?
But something near and dear to your heart is our movie today. And because we were talking about this not that long ago, I thought, wow, this is right up your alley. The 80s were a plethora of fantasy and science fiction style film. The Dark Crystal,
Mm-hmm.
Labyrinth,
Mm-hmm. One of my favorites.
and one of your favorites, today's movie. We are starting today with The Never Ending Story. Never Ending Story was released in 1984, and it was PG. Although I will say that some of the, back then the rating system was a little lighthearted on films, and this film has some things that would scare a younger child. I believe it.
Mm.
It runs 1 hour and 40 minutes long. It was directed by Wolfgang Petersen. This is a German film, if you did not know this. A German movie. And by the way, we you can't obviously see it, but we do have the film playing behind us on mute on the television. Like I said, did you know this was a German film?
Don't think so.
Yes, apparently my research dug this up. Like I said, it was directed by Wolfgang Petersen, and it was released in the United States. Now I'm going to make you feel old.
No.
It was released in the United States July 20th, 1984. Man, where were you in 1984?
I think I was in first grade, maybe second.
And in the same year, it was released in West Germany, April 6, 1984. So Germany got to see the film first.
And there's not even a West Germany anymore.
You got that right.
Shoot.
The map has changed since 84. It had a budget of $60 million in Germany, and the U.S. budget was $27 million. I'm sorry, that's Deutschmarks. $60 million in Deutschmarks and $27 million U.S. dollars. But at the box office, it brought in over $100 million. So it exceeded both Deutschmarks and the U.S. dollar on its budget. This was the most expensive film in German history up to that point to be made. I can't imagine what other films were made in Germany at the time that were even close to how expensive 60 million Deutschmarks would be. I don't even know do they still use Deutschmarks then? I don't think so.
Beats the heck out of me.
I thought they used the euro.
Maybe. I don't know what they use anymore.
So before I go any further, what was your first experience seeing this film?
I was in my best friend's room, a third bedroom in her house. It was called the TV room, and I think that's where I remember seeing it. And we were young, we were watching it, and we laughed at a lot of silly little things that we thought were funny. But
I'm sorry, was this on VHS?
Of course it was.
Okay.
What else would it be on?
Well, at the time, yeah.
But we watched it, we liked it, and I don't know, just always stuck with me.
I guess I understand why I just asked that question, because there was Betamax. So I didn't know what kind of, did she have a VCR or the Beta?
Pretty sure it was a VCR.
Okay. Because you could rent the movie. Back then you couldn't own films. You had to rent them. That's about the time.
Well, it might have been taped off the TV.
That's around the time video stores started getting really huge. And we're not talking about Blockbuster Video. We're talking about mom and pop, little corner video stores that went out of business a long time ago because of Blockbuster Video.
We went to Movie World.
We had a place, I forget what it was called. It was up on the corner of Sandy Street, up where Gennardi's used to be. I can't remember the name of it.
It wasn't West Coast Video, was it?
No, it wasn't a West Coast Video. It was over in East Norton on the other side of town.
Yeah.
We didn't go there. We went to this little tiny video place, And when we first bought a VCR, I remember my parents paid at least $2,000 for this VCR. And that's a joke now to even think about paying that for those things.
I have no idea. I don't even remember when we got a VCR. I have no idea.
The film stars Noah Hathaway as Atreyu, Barrett Oliver as Bastian, Gerald, you know what? I can never get his last name right. Major Dad?
Yes.
Yes. Gerald.
He's married to Delta Burke.
He was married to Delta Burke.
He's not anymore?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Did she die?
No, she did not die.
I don't know. Gerald McGrady. Anyway, he played Bastian's dad in the film. When this film was released, it was released in the U.S. into 950 theaters. You know there are 10 times more theaters in the U.S., maybe 20 times more now? See, when we went to the movies, there was only 2 screens. If we were lucky, there were 6. There was no megaplexes or movie taverns or 25 screens in a theater. You had to wait in line. As a matter of fact, and I will tell this story again. If I repeat stories, my apology. But I remember waiting in line with my mother and my godmother to see Return of the Jedi for 3 hours because there were only 2 screens running it. 2 screens. It's unbelievable. So the U.S. version of the film runs 102 minutes, And the German version, which I have never seen, runs 107 minutes. There's got to be an extra scene in there somewhere that they may have cut out of the U.S. version. There has to be. We were talking earlier about how this film is possibly a little dark and traumatizing to younger children.
You want to get some kind of reaction. You want to talk about childhood trauma is when poor Ortex sinks in the swamps of sadness.
I'll tell you what,
And
especially if you're an animal lover.
this poor boy just lost his best friend, and he has to continue on this journey without him.
You know how many of these 80s films, these mid to late 80s films, had this kind of death of a friend thing?
And, I mean, how traumatizing is that to a child?
I mean, fantasy or not, pretty
Watching
damn
your
sad.
best friend sink in the swamps of sadness. Gosh.
That's another thing about these films. Like the Labyrinth had the Bog of Eternal Stench, and this film has the
Swamps of
Sadness, and they came up with all these weird names for these bizarre places in these fantasy realms. I mean, the writers must have had a blast doing it.
I can imagine.
As far as the production of this film goes, it was shot at Bavaria Studios in Munich. Here we go, West Germany. And here's something really interesting. The street and the school interior were shot in Vancouver, Canada. Why were they shot in Canada? It's cheaper to film in Canada, and Canada, certain parts of Vancouver, look like New York. No kidding. A lot of films travel up to Canada, and they do that. So would you think it would be insane to truck an entire production all the way to Canada just to get some shots when you could easily have gone to New York City and done it?
No, I think, if that's the shot you want. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful buildings and skylines in Canada.
No, and it's funny because sometimes when they film movies, they use the exterior of the building. In the case of Ghostbusters, they used the exterior of the firehouse in the film, but the inside of the firehouse was not. It was a set.
Obviously, it's a set.
And they mesh it together and edit it so well, you have no idea.
Yeah. You'd never.
So, another part of this film that was obviously huge was the score. The score was composed by a German composer named Klaus Doldinger. Oh, man, these German names, I'm tough on these. Of the German jazz group Passport. Now, me being a jazz fan, I might just have to look that up later and check out who this band was. But I don't know what German jazz would sound like. I can imagine what German jazz would sound like. Don't sound like American jazz. Definitely not New Orleans jazz. And another part of this soundtrack was the title track by Christopher Lemmi. Is that how you pronounce it? Limaahi. Lemmi?
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Christopher Lemmi Hamill.
And
Let's
I'll
say
tell
that.
you, within maybe a couple of years ago, I always thought it was a woman singing this song.
Yes, and actually it was a German boy.
I always thought it was a
teenage
woman.
boy. He might have been a teenager. I'm not sure. And what's funny is that you would think back then soundtracks weren't really big as far as that goes. Now, barring a few, you had Queen doing the Flash Gordon soundtrack, another fantasy movie of that era that ultimately became a cult classic. And his song for The Never-Ending Story, the title track, hit number 17 on the Hot 100 Billboard charts. They were selling copies left and right.
And when me and my girlfriend were started watching it, we were always singing to it. So anyway, I just thought, not really weird, but I always just thought it was a female singing until I actually looked it up.
You know what's bizarre? And we're going to cover this in a little bit. The soundtrack originally did not get released right away. And wait till you hear when it did finally get released onto media. The film it won a 1985 Saturn Award, which I don't even know are still around anymore, the Saturn Awards, for Best Young Actor Performance for Noah Hathaway. He did win an award for Best Young Actor in the film. In fact, he was injured quite a bit in this movie, apparently. There was one or two times where he actually fell off the horse. There was another time when one of the giant mechanical puppets, one of the creatures, Gamork, yeah, actually malfunctioned and caught him in the eye and almost took his eye out, came real close to clawing out his eye. So, you never know what's going to go on a movie set. And obviously they can use a stunt double all they want, but when it has to be the actual actor, this is why actors have stunt doubles. It doesn't matter either way. Somebody could easily get hurt.
True, true, true.
So when this film was finally released on home media, it was released on VHS. And obviously, you know, you had to rent it. I'm sure this tape was worn out left and right at the video store. I'm sure it was. This was so popular with kids at the time. It was right along the lines of how popular E.T. was. Well, believe me when I tell you, E.T. was hugely popular in the 80s.
Sorry, I just
and I'm sorry, I'm an E.T. fan, but that's for another show, and I'm not going to get into the E.T. thing with
for
you.
Another show.
There's a whole thing with you. I don't understand sometimes. You know, I know to each their own and all that other stuff, but I've never understood why this movie in particular, The Never-Ending Story, is big for you, and you don't like other films of that time.
I just have so many memories of this movie. I never even saw the Labyrinth until I met you.
More memories than actual just memories of the film.
Right.
You're connecting something with the film.
Yes. Yep. I think that's why.
So also, down the road, after VHS was dead and gone, Warner Brothers, who owns the rights to the film, or at least the U.S. version of it, released it on Laserdisc. Do you remember Laserdiscs? They were about the size of a record, and I'm sure somebody out there in the audience, I'm sure somebody owned a Laserdisc player somewhere.
I've seen them. I don't really know if I remember anybody.
There were also these other things called, they were Laserdiscs, but they were like cartridges. They looked like gigantic flat, I forget what they were called. And they literally, you put it in and you pull it out. It literally takes out the disc for you. It was very complicated. But these things were bigger than VCRs. So they were very clunky to have around. They basically fit on top of your giant square television, you know, because we had tube TVs. We didn't have HD TVs, flat screens like we have today. Yeah. I remember those TVs that they used to have had the picture in it, and around it were the speakers. It was all like a wood grain finish. It looked like a big cabinet around it.
Thing was heavy as heck.
Yeah, the whole thing was, the tube was probably not as heavy of the TV as the whole thing around it, as the dry sink around it or whatever it was. It was released in 1985 with a digital stereo soundtrack. Now this is going to make you laugh. I know you say, geez, why do you have to buy multiple copies of stuff? Well, this is why, because this is what the studios used to do to you. And it's almost as frustrating as streaming can be. Then, in 1991, Warner Brothers released it in widescreen with no special features. Nothing on it. Bare bones, just the movie.
Which is good enough for me. I mean, I don't have to have everything glorious with the movie. I'm just fine with the movie.
I understand.
Although I do like some bloopers now and then.
You know, that's the one thing. Every film should have blooper reels.
Especially horror films.
Reels.
I think.
Yeah.
So you really know it's just a film. And so do your kids if they want to watch it with you, you know?
No, I understand completely. And that's the other thing is you got to get beyond stuff, especially with kids at a young age. And to be honest, I don't know if kids would be as impressed with this film as they are with today's movies. But in our opinion, and I know you agree with me on a lot of this, today's movies just aren't that good.
No,
There's very
sure
few
aren't.
movies that come down the pike that are any good.
Or even worth watching in the theater to pay those prices.
In 2001, they released it again on DVD, but only in North America. Only the North American release of the film, but this time it had 2.0 stereo mix. Now, 2.0 stereo mix in your surround sound is okay. And it only had the trailer. It actually had the trailer for the film on it.
You know, when I would watch this movie at home by myself, and my mother would walk into the room, she'd say, "Are you watching this movie with the giant dog in it again?" I said, "Mom, it's a luck dragon." "No, it's a dog. It looks like a dog." "No, it's a luck dragon, Mom." What are you going to do? Parents.
Well, you know, I think certain people, I never knew your mother to be as big as a movie fan.
Got that right.
You know, I mean, she likes certain things. But I will give them this. At least she's seen The Godfather. Some people her age never seen it. Like I said before, there are certain films that at least they saw it. Now, I know people who see films that haven't seen them for 40 years. You know, that's I guess, you know, different than never seeing them at all. At least they've seen them once. So like I was telling you before, in 2003, going back to the release of these, there is a lavish, spectacular European version of the film with a 45-minute documentary, 2 discs, music video for The Never-Ending Story, and it's long out of print. Once Blu-ray came around after DVD had, well, Blu-ray was the next evolution. In DVD was 720 pixel, and now you're talking about 1080, which Blu-ray upped the game. On March 2nd, 2010, Warner Brothers released a Blu-ray with DTS Master Sound and 5.1 surround sound. Bare bones, no special features. Again, here's a breadcrumb, Warner Brothers. Again, not giving you really what you want. And that's why I like a lot of these independent companies who do Blu-ray, Shout Factory, Umbrella Entertainment. They actually put together these monster box sets. They come with the soundtrack for the film. They come with all kinds of goodies, a book, all kinds of cool stuff and special features. You actually get what you pay for instead of some stupid, here's the film. Good luck.
But sometimes that's just good enough for me. I mean, not everybody's a film guru like you.
No, but there are a lot of film gurus like me. And I'll say this. It pleases me to see that stuff. How do you think we become film gurus? By seeing and watching and learning documentaries. And this is how it happens. This is how we get curated on these films. I mean, you really have to spend a little bit of time to watch a couple hours or an hour documentary. It's a rainy day. You got nothing better to do. Some people are just too busy for that. There is the casual movie fan, and there's plenty of them.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
2014, now here we go again. 30th anniversary. This had special features, trailer, commentary tracks with Wolfgang Peterson, documentaries from 84 and the 2014 release. I mean, it's insane that they just keep releasing bigger and better ones. And you almost say to yourself, Jesus, why did I buy the very first edition? And then it's out of print, and believe it or not, that's kind of turned on its head. Now some of these out of print first edition DVDs from like 1999 when they first were launched are worth more because they're becoming collector's items.
Yeah, but you buy the one movie, and then years later they redo it again, and then years later they redo it again with more things, and years later they do it again with more things. Doesn't it get a little redundant?
It does, and it gets to the point where you don't care anymore. Like, for instance, for me, 4K is the be-all, end-all. I will purchase nothing past 4K. First of all, the human eye can't even... I mean, how much more detailed can your picture get? I mean, 8K would be the next step, and I just don't think physical media will be around by then, unfortunately, for 8K. But the whole point of the physical media thing is that you own the film. That's the biggest, most important thing. Bare bones or not, no special features or not. You own the film. And They can't take it from you. They can't cut something out of it that you remember. They cannot censor it, which, by the way, I hate to say it, I hate to throw people under the bus, but there are a lot of movie studios out there right now that are censoring and cutting up films on streaming services. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of films that aren't even on streaming services. And I'm not talking about like rare films either. I'm talking about seriously good films that aren't on a streaming service. And it shocks me to no end. So the legacy of this film, it has had a remarkable, what can I say, a remarkable effect on pop culture over the years, like a lot of movies have. And to this day, I still can't find a Never-Ending Story T-shirt. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's a company somewhere.
I would never even look to find that.
It's the silliest stuff. I'm sure there's a company out there somewhere that makes it. But the problem is they have to have the rights to it. And apparently, and you'll find out in a minute here on this next segment, you're going to find out that the rights to this film are kind of difficult to get. It's really bizarre. So in the next segment, we'll have to talk about that, and we'll take a quick break during this interlude. We'll be right back. And we're back talking about one of the more cooler fantasy films of the 80s, 1984's The Never-Ending Story. So, we've talked about a lot so far, and I guess as you get to the bottom line is that every movie leaves a legacy. And now I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at Red over here that she may not have known about the film. Legacy.
Do your worst.
What does legacy mean to you? I mean, I look at it as what a film leaves behind, the effect it has on a generation. Would you say that was accurate?
Yeah, I guess I would. I mean,
Like what the Rubik's Cube did for a generation.
Yeah, but Dave figured out how to tick the stickers off and just put them right together.
Unfortunately, you can't do that with a film. But we can pick films apart, and that's the best part about watching them. So apparently, I knew this, but I had no idea that it was actually linked to the film. There's an American heavy metal band named Atreyu. No joke.
I didn't know that.
No, I did know that, and I remember hearing them back in high school about them, like in my high school years, but I never actually heard the band, but I never made the connection.
I'd never even heard of them. I had no idea.
And on our friends down south in Mexico, there's a Mexican pop band called Falcor. So the names the pop culture just keeps on going all the way to Mexico.
And I have to say, my cousin named her dog Falcor.
See? It does have an effect on a certain generation of people.
Yeah, it does.
So when the kids were younger, do you remember them? There was this band, and I thought it was only for the show. They used to watch, what was it, Noggin on Nickelodeon.
Oh, I loved Noggin.
And there was this band on a certain show. They were called the Aquabats. Do you remember?
Aquabats.
They would show up and do some little jingle, and then they'd be gone. And they're an actual band, the Aquabats.
I knew Laurie Berkner was band.
Right. And apparently this Aquabats, and I remember them sort of, but they didn't do too many segments. I think that's where they originally started, was on the Nickelodeon stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. Apologies if I'm wrong. But the Aquabats, okay, describe Falcor's potential romantic life in a song they wrote called Luck Dragon Lady. So, once again, pop culture reaches all the way into the 2000s. The film has a long outreach. Do you know who Kathleen Kennedy is? Kathleen Kennedy, if you do not know.
Big producer. Of a
Yes. She used to be George Lucas's gopher. She would bring him coffee on the set. She would do all kinds of stuff. She became a big producer. She also helped executive produce the new Star Wars films, the more recent trilogy. In 2011, she had issues securing rights to the story, and she felt that a second adaptation could be possible. But, unfortunately, she couldn't get the rights to the next, to the film. And she said it would be impossible to try to get it. So I don't know if she was trying to remake the film, which I don't think would do this film justice at all.
No.
I mean, no digital. Since we grew up in the era of the Muppets, I don't think any digital replacement here of Falcor or any of the creatures would be warranted, because it just wouldn't work, in my opinion. It would look way too fake.
Yeah, and besides, they're remaking way too many movies that have been.
This has become a problem in Hollywood over the last 15 years or so.
They cannot find any new ideas, so they're just remaking movies.
Now, there are good movies out there that they come up with original ideas, like that recent film, The Holdovers, with Paul Giamatti. I would love to see that movie. It looked interesting. It looks like an original film. It's not something they just re-pushed.
But how many Spider-Mans do you have to see?
Well, that's the other issue, is they keep trying. I think a friend of mine, James, he brought up the fact that they have to make the film to hold on to the intellectual property. That means to keep the rights to the movie, every so many years, they have to make the movie again. Because if they do not do that, they lose the intellectual rights to the film, the movie studio, and then they're done. They lose it, and then it goes to public domain or something. Like recently, my disgust with Disney about letting the original drawing of Mickey go, the original Steamboat Willie go, into public domain. I don't understand Walt. I mean, if Walt was alive, he'd be sick to his stomach. I can't imagine. I can't imagine his original work going to public domain and them not holding that in treasure. But without Walt, there is no Walt Disney, by the way. Let me remind you, people. Let me remind you that with no Walt, there is no, thank you. There's no Walt Disney.
True.
So getting back to the film, the soundtrack. Remember we talked about earlier, the soundtrack was not released right away. The soundtrack to this film, The Neverending Story, was not released till October 17th, 1990. 1990.
90.
Almost.
I don't think I've ever even heard the soundtrack. I don't know that I ever really knew that there was one.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't understand why it took so long. The formats were on CD and cassette, of course. That was our that was our time for the one. There is a collector's edition that was released August 25th, 2017. It was only on CD, and the title song has extra versions of the title song. There's a 12-inch dance mix and a 12-inch dubstep mix of the Neverending Story. If you can imagine the Neverending Story meets a disco dub beat, imagine. And anybody who's heard that song knows it could probably be twisted into that.
Yeah. Yep.
I can't imagine that on a 12-inch dance. Could you imagine like Studio 54 back in the 70s blasting the Neverending Story with a beat
Star
to the
Wars.
back? They did. Mezco did that. Mezco or Mecco did that to Star Wars. They have the disco Star Wars. Absolutely. So in a little bit here, we'll go over the final notes for the. Actually, let's do that right now. Let's do the final notes for the film right now. Hey, what are you cooking back there? Man, it's not popcorn. I'm going to tell you what. Nothing goes better with a movie than popcorn. Believe me when I tell you.
And extra butter.
Extra butter. It's too much. Too greasy. Yeah. I don't put butter on my popcorn at all. I think it's disgusting. It's just too greasy. And then, when I was a kid and you were watching a 3D movie, if you had Butterfingers...
Well, you were stupid. You don't supposed to touch
if you touched your lenses, that was it. I couldn't get another pair of glasses.
Well, that was your
I was
fault.
out of luck. I was out of luck.
Silly.
Final thoughts. Final thought. Final thought on this film. Final notes. Not final thoughts, final notes. It was distributed by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, at the time, one of the biggest movie studios, still is. Universal and Warner Brothers, to me, have always been the two biggest. Universal was the first movie studio to open, but Warner Brothers always, they were always right there, competing with them. We all love The Simpsons.
Yeah.
At least most people, I hope, all love The Simpsons. There's the episode called New Kid on the Block, has our favorite bad attorney, Lionel Hutz, claiming to have filed a lawsuit against the film The Neverending Story for fraudulent advertising. And speaking of streaming services, September 2022, a bidding war and a TV rights war between studios and streaming services and platforms emerged for the film. They're fighting over to get the rights to stream it. This is what I was talking about. They can't put the damn movie on streaming, and they're fighting over the rights to it. Now, remember, this was a German film, German company who made it. It would be like Toho, who, takes care of the Godzilla films. That would be like them holding on to their rights to the movie. It's just amazing to me how we don't have to worry about it. We don't. We own the film. Now, perhaps you do, as a casual viewer, don't want to own the film. That would be a little difficult. If you can't find your favorite movie or TV show streaming, and believe me, there's plenty of them that are not.
True.
And there's plenty of them that are on and then get ripped off.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think the studios and streaming platforms want you to continue to pay again and again for something you don't own. Now, that's redundant in the fact that, you mentioned earlier that I keep buying more platforms. Yeah, I went from DVD to Blu-ray. Yes, but I still own the film. If I decided not to upgrade from Blu-ray to the higher picture quality and sound quality, I could have done that. I could have just kept my DVD. Some films just come out on DVD and never make it to Blu-ray. There are so many films that haven't even made it. One of the best things studios do now is they'll write out their intellectual properties of the film or the rights to a film, and they will send it to a third party, like I mentioned before, Umbrella Entertainment, Shout Factory, Scream Factory, and they'll say, hey, here's 10 films. You guys distribute this on physical media. For 1 year, you can make a deluxe box set, whatever you want to do. Like they did, Scream Factory did an amazing, and I cannot wait to get into it, Friday the 13th box set with every film in it. And it's just mind-blowing, the special features and everything. And this is what we want. This is what collectors want. They want that hunger for that extra stuff. You want to know everything and see everything, including blooper reels, which Red loves. You want to see it and hear it all. Coming up, my final thoughts. Hang in there. And we're back.
Ooh, okay, I'm back too.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Hey, this has been fun. I got to tell you, it's worked out much more than I thought it would. It's been great chatting movie with you, and I know how much you enjoy this film.
I've been watching it the whole time we've been here.
Well, this is the whole reason for me running it behind us,
And
because
here comes Gamorreek about to attack
have some lunch.
Treo.
This is the scene. This is the scene that he almost got hurt on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So walking along that way, how about this? How about what would you give this movie as far as a rating, as far as a star rating, from 1 to 4 stars? What would you give this film?
I myself, 3.5.
3.5. Now 3.5 is interesting. Why would you not give it 4? I know how much you love the film. Explain why.
I guess there's never really a perfect film.
No, there certainly is not. There is no perfect film, no matter how good it is.
It has everything in it for me that I love. Everything else, everything just works good. I don't know.
All right, I'll say this. I'll say this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I will give it 3 stars, and I'll tell you why. Because it really was not my type of film, and I don't want to get too much into this, and I don't want to upset anybody, but there were certain movies of the 80s which I thought were just films, and this may have been me thinking as a kid. Girls watch that movie, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, girls love Strawberry Shortcake. Boys played with Smurfs and He-Man, not Strawberry Shortcake.
I played with Smurfs.
This is what I mean. It's like I didn't see this film.
I had She-Ra
as a bunch of dudes going, "Go, Atreyu, go!" No, it didn't work that way. That's not the way we thought. You know, it was more like it just wasn't. And what's weird
fantasy.
is that it's fantasy. But what's weird is that movies like The Dark Crystal and even Labyrinth, which is almost a musical if you tear it down to its core, because there's a lot of music in it. God bless David Bowie, by the
Seriously.
way. And it's just, I don't know. This film just didn't have all that stuff, and I don't know, the side story and the most confusing part of the entire film when he screams his mother's name out the window and you don't hear it.
That I do have to say is the weirdest name. I would never name my child or anybody.
Do not say it, because we don't want to ruin it for the audience that hasn't seen the movie.
Okay, you're right, but it's a name that you wouldn't normally name a human, but that's
bizarre.
beyond me.
Bizarre at its best. It's strange. So right now we're going to take a quick walk. These steps are long. Down into the dungeon for a preview of next week's show, or the next show.
Yeah, that's
Chamber door. That sounds just about
much.
right, doesn't it?
It does.
Oh boy, there's a lot to choose from down here, by the way. And we got to walk all the way back up the steps. Kind of sounds like our basement step, doesn't it?
A little bit.
So for the next preview of the show, we're going to stick with these fantasy films. I'm probably going to choose another film from this era. I haven't quite decided on which, but I'm sure and positive that it will be something most interesting. Like I said, I'm going to stick with this era for a little bit. It gets really good rapport, and I think that it works on a level of family film. These are family movies. They speak out to family, you know, And that brings me to my final thought. You know, when we were kids and we watched these films, our eyes would pop out of our heads. And, man, it was the world. The first time you saw Back to the Future. The first time you saw The Never-Ending Story. And you just walked out of the theater or from your house going, wow, I want to be Atreyu. I would love to be Flash. I would love to be the hero. Oh man, that villain, he almost got away with it. It was nothing you and your friends could always talk about. It was the be all end all. Unfortunately, you know, that time is gone, and now you can talk about it with your friends and educate people on it. And that, my friends, is the whole point of the show and brings this show to a halt. I want to thank my co-host, Red.
You're welcome.
And hopefully, you know, she'll be with me for the next show. If not, that's okay. She may not be able to join us for every show. But that's it. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And hopefully the next show will be even better than this one. And just as a reminder, you are listening to Cinematic Treasures. My name's Chris.
I'm Red.
And remember, everybody, always stay frosty.